Let's bring in our panel. Jose Aristimuño is a former deputy press secretary for the Democratic National Committee and founder of Now Strategies. Beverly Hallberg is president of District Media Group and host of the Filler Words podcast. Thank you both for weighing in on this issue today. We will talk about Porter in just a moment. But what is your response to the news that speechwriter David Sorensen has resigned amid allegations made by his wife, who claims he was violent and emotionally abusive? Allegations, by the way, that he denies but stepped down amid the outcry that erupted over the Rob Porter story. I'll begin with you, Beverly.
Yeah, I think all of this is extremely concerning. We've seen this for months now, that when there are allegations, there are a lot of concerns. We want to make sure that the allegations are credible. And I also want to say with the Rob Porter situation, I think a lot of these allegations are credible, which has been bad for the White House. You mentioned the possibility of General Kelly, the chief of staff, resigning.
I'm going to get to that in just a moment, but let me give Jose a chance to weigh in on that. We'll get to that in just a moment. Weigh in on that issue for me, Will. If you will, Jose, about David Sorensen.
Sure. Look, I agree with Beverly. There is no place in our government. I'm glad that he resigned. There's no place in our government for people who are domestic abusers. No woman should ever be disrespected or touched in a violent way, ever.
So, Beverly, to your point then, the case with Rob Porter is that he did step down after his two ex-wives accused him of domestic abuse, and one of them even posting a photograph of the alleged abuse. Now, the case has placed a lot of attention, as you know, on the White House Chief of Staff, John Kelly, who went before the public to attest his character, but in private urged Porter to stay on. So following that, as you know, and as you were alluding to, there was some talk that Kelly's days, well, they might have been numbered as Chief of Staff, but the White House is firmly pushing back hard on that report that was by ABC News. So what are you hearing from your sources, Beverly, in the White House about Kelly's standing with the president?
I think there's a possibility that he will resign, and here's the reason why. Is I don't think anybody thinks that General Kelly took this job as chief of staff because this was his dream job to have. I think he took it because he wanted to do what was in the best interest of the country, and he's made some critical errors in this past week. Of course, there's whether or not he knew about Rob Porter. What does he know in the past? The reports that are pointing to he at least knew something, and it's his job to make sure that no staff member of the administration puts the administration in a bad light at all. But in addition to that, and this is what's most concerning from a PR perspective, is that he went on record after the story broke and made a statement about Rob Porter being a great guy. Well, I'm sure people thought Matt Lauer was a great guy at the Today Show. They even had some of his colleagues saying this wasn't the guy we knew, but that's not the point. The point is that there is credible or seemingly credible evidence, serious evidence that Rob Porter did do this to his ex-wives, and I think it was really him falling on his sword to come out and say, hey, but I like him.
Jose, what's your response to all of this? I mean, the public's hearing it, and many are saying that the president, well, he wasn't protected by his chief of staff.
Well, look, if I work for this White House, I would advise the president to have John Kelly resign immediately. And like Beverly said, from a PR perspective, John Kelly is going to become a distraction to this White House. He should resign immediately. I think he mishandled his whole fiasco. His White House statements contradicted himself. He defended Rob Porter, then he didn't defend. And look, whether he knew about what Rob Porter did recently or months ago, the fact of the matter is that Rob Porter had this sort of history for a very long time. And the FBI, while they were going through the security clearance, you know, they were leaning against not giving him the full clearance because of what he has done in the past. So John Kelly needs to step down, and look, it's for the good of the White House. Again, if I work for this White House, I would advise the president to let John Kelly go and move forward.
Let me ask this question then. As we've seen in Ellison Barber's report earlier in our program from Washington, she wanted to report that President Trump weighed in on this issue with a tweet stating, and I'm getting beyond the John Kelly aspects of it and looking at Rob Porter and David Sorensen. And this is what the president tweeted. He says, people's lives are being shattered and destroyed by a mere allegation, is how he describes it. Some are true and some are false. Is there no such thing as any longer as due process? Are you satisfied with the way the president and the White House has handled this Porter case and the Sorensen case, Beverly?
I think this tweet is a mistake, and here's the reason why. I wouldn't be surprised if President Trump didn't know about the past of Rob Porter. That's not his job to know what the background checks. That's what his chief of staff is supposed to do. So I thought he should have stayed out of this altogether. But for him to also say that these are mere allegations, and once again, we're talking about 2 ex-wives. There is photographic evidence of abuse. There is also a temporary restraining order that one of the ex-wives placed against Rob Porter. There is evidence here, and we want to talk about due process. Of course, that's a legal term. That is in the legal field. We want to make sure. But when you're talking about the appearance and now credible allegations, this is very bad for the administration for them to stake their claim on this.
Jose, a lot of people who support the president are with him 100% regardless, and even with this particular situation. But one has to wonder if they're responding in such a way, saying, well, Mr. President, you talked about Rob Porter and David Sorensen as being people of character and due process, but you didn't say anything about the women who made the allegations. You didn't say anything to them. How do you think the American public is responding to that, including his supporters?
Sure. Well, look, I hope they react in a negative way. It's shameful that the president will tweet about and try to defend, in a way, the accusers when he should be defending the woman, the countless women, not only these 2 specific cases, but other cases throughout the country. This should be an opportunity for the president to act presidential and say no woman should ever have to face domestic violence.
Beverly, I'll give you the last word.
Yeah, I would like to see that from all politicians, regardless of whether or not they're Democrat or Republican. I'm here calling out President Trump in his comments, but I think Democrats also need to call out some of their own. So I would encourage people on, regardless of their partisan politics, these types of things need to be called out.
I agree.
Very tough times in which we're living in. Sensitive times, obviously, when it comes to domestic violence, and a lot of people wondering, will we be able to talk about this topic and get beyond it, and also help the women who are victims of domestic violence, and also help the men in terms of educating them and giving them some awareness of how they should behave, alleged or not. Beverly,
Yep.
thank you. Jose, thank you.
Good to be with you.